once you register, if you're just a farmer who's looking around, you basically can search the marketplace for any part of this process. What the processors are doing, how much they're processing, what are the specs they're processing towards. You can see the manufacturers. As a farmer, you can see the manufacturer's demand cycle.
That's Duane Shugars from Hemp Katalyst talking about a new platform for farmers, processors, and manufacturers. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I will be talking to Duane Shugars about Hemp Katalyst. We'll find out how this platform came together, the team that's building it, how it works, how it's going to benefit your hemp operation. So stay tuned for all that. We're going to take a quick sponsor break and then come back with a few nuggets of hemp news. This episode is brought to you in part by Mpactful Ventures, an investment and incubation company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. At Mpactful Ventures, they strive to amplify enterprises that bring innovative, green opportunities to the forefront and empower those making a significant impact for a sustainable future. You can learn more at mpactfulventures.org. This episode is brought to you in part by iHemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. iHemp is a family-owned, mission-driven, and environmentally focused industrial hemp food, feed, and fiber company, providing new opportunities for farmers and rural communities. Their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. Learn more at indhemp.com. Okay, before we get into the nuggets of hemp news, I want to just remind you that the House of Representatives they've got a deadline of this Friday to get their farm bill priorities in. And so if the hemp exemption is important to you, and I assume it is, I'm recommending that you contact your representatives and let them know that it's important to you and that it should be important to them. You can go to hemp-exemption.com, and there's a little easy thing where you can click on, you can find your representatives, and it'll actually send a letter of support directly to them. So there you go. Let's get this hemp exemption done, okay? All right, on to some nuggets of hemp news, and I'm going to try something new this week. So normally when I find the nuggets of hemp news, I will either summarize them myself or maybe just, read a few paragraphs. Today, I'm gonna put the artificial intelligence to work. I found a few, hemp news stories, and I've put them into the Chat GPT and asked it to write a one-paragraph summary of each story. So we're going to try that today. All right. This first story is actually from here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And I know I should probably be reading the story off of one of our sister publications, but I found this at thedailyvoice.com. And it says that 7,000 plus THC-laced fake branded products were seized in Lancaster County by the DA. And the story, summarized by the robots, says over 7,200 THC-laced fake branded products worth approximately $290,000 were seized by the Lancaster County Drug Task Force in Pennsylvania. The operation targeted 43 stores, resulting in the discovery of illegal Delta-8 and Delta-10 THC products, including vapes, oils, gummies, and even snacks like chips and candy. Charges were not immediately filed against store owners who cooperated by surrendering the products, but charges will be pursued if sales resume. Similar operations were conducted in other counties in 2022. All right, this next story I found on hemptoday.net. The headline reads, Minnesota okays hemp-derived Delta-8 and Delta-9 THC, but bans other synthetics. And then the robots summarize it like this. Minnesota has legalized high-producing Delta-8 and Delta-9 THC derived from industrial hemp, allowing their widespread availability. The state's unique cannabis law permits the sale of edibles and drinks containing these THC compounds, but prohibits smokable products. The move sets Minnesota apart from other states that are attempting to regulate CBD-based psychoactive products. However, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration intends to ban highly concentrated synthetic THC products, which could pose challenges for Minnesota. The law also reduces compliance costs, eases banking rules, and establishes provisions for testing, labeling, and licensing. Recreational marijuana business licenses are expected to be issued in the next 12 to 18 months. This next story I found on marijuanamoment.net. The headline reads, USDA renames Trade Committee to recognize hemp as a key specialty crop. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is renaming an advisory committee to include hemp, recognizing it as a valuable commodity. The committee will now be known as the Agricultural Technical Advisory Committees for Trade in Tobacco, Cotton, Peanuts, and Hemp. This move reflects the mainstream recognition of hemp's agricultural and trade importance. Hemp was legalized under the 2018 Farm Bill, and the USDA has been working with the industry to support its growth. The renaming demonstrates the agency's understanding of hemp's unique value in the market. Yeah, I think the robot's doing a pretty good job here. All right, and this last story comes to us from financialregnews.com, but I will say that we reported on this very story in Lancaster Farming last week. The headline reads, Representatives Rosendale and Houlahan introduce Industrial Hemp Act. U.S. Representatives Matt Rosendale and Chrissy Houlahan have introduced the Industrial Hemp Act, a bipartisan legislation aimed at creating a separate classification for industrial hemp and establishing a new regulatory framework. The proposed act seeks to remove burdensome regulations that hinder the growth of the hemp industry, allowing farmers to take full advantage of this booming agricultural market. Well, booming, that seems a bit much, but we'll have to correct the robot on that. Current regulations lack clarity and fail to distinguish industrial hemp from other hemp products, creating hurdles for growers and causing confusion among various industries such as banking, transportation, and insurance. The bill has garnered support from organizations like the Hemp Feed Coalition and is seen as a positive step towards modernizing the regulation of the hemp industry and supporting farmers. Yeah, there you go. So like I said in the beginning, the deadline for the House of Representatives to get their Farm Bill priorities in is this Friday, June 9th. So please contact your representatives and make them know that the Hemp Exemption, aka the 2023 Industrial Hemp Act, is important to you and should become law. All right, so that's the news here from the Hemp Podcast Studio in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And I guess now it's time to move on to our main event, which is a conversation I recorded last week with Duane Shugars from Hemp Katalyst. That's Katalyst with a K. So, all right, you ready? Here we go. Duane Shugars from Hemp Katalyst. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent now that I get to talk to the man, the legend around Lancaster love. So I'm glad to be here, man.
Well, thanks. I'm not sure if you mean me or if there's someone else on the call, but yeah.
Only you. Only you.
Well, why don't you give us a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll talk about Hemp Katalyst.
Yeah, my backgrounds are going to be a little bit weird. I've spent the last 30.
Start it with I'm Duane Shugars.
My name. Okay, I got you. Okay, yeah. All right. Thank you. My name is Duane Shugars. I'm the president and CEO of Hemp Katalyst. My entry into this industry has been a little bit maybe different than most in the way that I've spent 35 years building big data cyber solutions for DoD and intelligence community. And I was introduced to the power or the potential power of industrial hemp about 4.5 months ago. And like most of the times I get into stuff, I go from 0 to 60. And so I've spent 3 months learning everything I could about what's real, what's not real, because this thing seemed way too good to be true. And I'm a risk mitigator. But after 2 months, 3 months in this, all I saw was opportunity and asked the question, why aren't we doing more in the U.S. around industrial hemp? And so I launched a Hemp Katalyst for that purpose.
Yeah, well, let me stop you there before we get into that. Tell me, you said you've only been in this for a few months, so give me some of like the key points. Like, what is it that you were like, oh my God, really? What?
Yep.
Tell me what blew your mind.
Yeah, the versatility of this plant, the fact that it can be used across so many different of our major industries. And I was like, well, and I'm not like a hardcore environmentalist or anything like that. I mean, we all want the water and the air to be clean. But when I started understanding the amount of carbon this plant collects over any other plant or tree, I started asking myself, this doesn't seem like it's a bad thing. It can't be a bad thing. There's nothing bad about it. But then all you hear is about THC and CBD, and it gets mixed up and confused. And so I saw that confusion instantly. Right? People are like, "Oh, you're in hemp." Not really. I'm in industrial hemp, the stalk. So that first presence of the versatility of this plant, the power of its ability to collect carbon, were the two interesting things to me. And I felt like, hey, this thing is real, and it's been used all over the world, right, for decades and centuries, and we are last to the game. But we have farmers, the best farmers in the world, the best manufacturing in the world, and I thought, and if we could just get this thing off the ground, this thing would be huge. And so the versatility of this plant was impressive, the carbon collection. But the market is fragmented in the U.S., and so that became my sort of focus, my focal point of how do we try to fix that as a community.
Okay, because your background in big data, so you can look at this problem from a whole new perspective, really.
It's really, and the beautiful part is really, there's nothing big about the data that we're dealing with here, right? But we were able to, and we are, working on trying to use some of that past experience we had to connect the dots in this industry, because farmers are farming, processors are doing their best to, build facilities, process stuff. Manufacturers are still using foreign sources. So there's a lot of stuff there that we can, work to try to help. I'm not saying we're going to, fix the problem, but I think together as a community, having a platform that connects those dots is useful.
Okay. Before you explain what that platform is, like explain a little bit more about like the specific problem you were trying to solve through this platform.
Yes, and I'm a tester, right? My brain, every business I've been in, I've written a business plan and then tested that for a period of time, and so this one was no different. I made some hypothesis, and I said to myself, can it be this fragmented? And so I started looking to buy seeds. I said, well, what's that process look like? Well, no, most of it's coming from Europe, most of it's coming from China. Very few North American genetics. So I said, okay, I'm going to order some seeds. Blah, right? Weeks. We finally got the seeds. Talked to Steve Groff. He's one of our agriculture leads, and he said the farmers are dying because they've invested all this money in CBD, and they got, I'm not
Burned.
I'll say burned. That's the better word. And so convincing them to grow another version of this might be tough. And so, when you really look at it, it's like, I guess the point that I was trying to at least understand is how do we position a new model that can help the farmers really produce a legacy-based, system.
Tell me how your product is going to help farmers.
Yeah. So, as part of this test, we ordered from processors. We called processors. We said what kind of hemp and herd you had. We ordered tons of that, got it shipped. The shipping was horrible. Nobody wanted to ship it. Processors asked us what kind we wanted. I didn't know much about this. I said, give me samples of whatever you got. Got those samples. In the process, we started connecting to manufacturers, people who are actually using industrial hemp now in the U.S., sourcing it from outside the U.S., and said, what would it take for you to move your supply chain into the U.S.? They said, here's our specs. Can you meet our specs? So we got those specs. We asked those same processors, can you meet these specs? And all of them said, no, not with what we've got. And so I saw this disconnect. And so what I was hoping is that if we could create a platform that would allow manufacturers to publish those specs, to tell farmers what genetics to grow for those specs, what the processor should be building, and what kind of machines they should be using to process towards those specs. We're now producing a very efficient supply chain, as opposed to now farmers are growing because they're getting paid processors are building because they believe the demand is coming. But every single time I've asked any of them, where's the demand? Oh, we've got someone buying a whole bunch of herd here in the U.S. But what about fiber? Well, we got 400,000 pounds of it sitting, not geared for anything. And to me, that's a missed opportunity. And so I feel like all this communication, calling, emailing that I had to do for 3 months, we could bring it to one single pane of glass where folks can come in and see what's being grown, what genetics are being grown, how much is available, what kind of processing is being done, how much processing is being done, what's the quality of that processing. And just as important, manufacturers to publish their requirements either for today or tomorrow so that the supply chain gets informed and gets confident that there is demand. We're buying, I think, $100 million a year from foreign sources. To me, that says there's demand, right? But the communication, the connecting of those dots is just not where it should be. And I think building this platform was a means to an end, one, to help that, but then to help us because we are also growing hemp, industrial hemp, and processing it. So it's hopefully going to help all of us.
Okay. So the platform is called Hemp Katalyst. Can you explain, how people can interface with that or, how to find it?
Yep. Well, the actual platform, we didn't want it to get confused from our growing and processing side. So it's called Metaihemp. So META iHemp. And that little AI in the middle is emphasized in our branding because we are, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're using artificial intelligence, the bad word of today, to help really energize the supply chain, as well as keep it going. And so called Metaihemp.com. And it is right now scheduled to be launched the second week in June, full week in June, so the 12th, I think the week of the 12th.
Okay, so that's coming up soon, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Taking us 3 months, all that experience in the old world of DoD helped us build this thing very rapidly. And we'll have a fairly significant marketing campaign to get out to manufacturers, to get out to farmers, processors, to see if they're willing to engage with this platform. It's free, right? Farmers can put their acres in, what kind of genetics to grow. It's all industrial hemp. We emphasize that because we don't want CBD to be put in here, any of the THC products, not that we don't love them, but this is very specific to U.S. industrial hemp.
Right. Okay. What types of industries are you contacting to get their specs?
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, paper, plastic, construction. This thing is so versatile that when you really start looking at its possible place in the future of the materials that are, in some cases, very destructive, right? There are materials in all those industries that are destructive. We did what we had to do to get it where we are, and that's awesome. But let's figure out if we can inject a little bit of environmental healing into those product lines, those industries. So the big ones, plastic is a big one, right? Obviously, for all kinds of reasons, paper, wood, hemp wood. There's a company in Kentucky called Hemp Wood, which I know you've had on the podcast before, doing great work, converting this fiber into consumable woods, hardwood, all kinds of other stuff. Hempcrete, hemp insulation, all these things have huge value propositions. And I'm just excited that, we're at an emerging part of this market because I think we could all go for a pretty good ride here.
Before you launch the platform in a couple of weeks, will it be populated with a lot of industry data?
Yeah, we have today over 3,200 farmers from the USDA dump. Doesn't mean it's all of them. We have, we've aggregated over, I think, 4,400 in some industry, manufacturers, construction, textile, you name it, all in the U.S., by the way. We're focused there right now. And so, yes, there will be a populated with as much stuff as we could get, so that when someone comes in and they search for their company to associate themselves with, our hope is it's going to be there so they feel like this is part that is been built for them. If not, it's easy enough to add it. But we've tried to populate it with as much content as possible, starting out.
Okay. And so let's say I were a farmer, I would go to the website and I would just simply register, or how would that work?
Like take 2 minutes to register. You'll get the little email. You'll do all the security stuff that we all have to do now. Once you register, if you're just a farmer who's looking around, you basically can search the marketplace for any part of this process, what the processors are doing, how much they're processing, what are the specs they're processing towards, You can see the manufacturers as a farmer. You can see the manufacturers demand, the demand cycle. But if you're the owner of the farmer and you want to add your acreage to the marketplace, we validate that. We want to make sure that whoever says they own something owns it.
Sure.
Once they validate it, then it's easy just to add the field name, the acres. We give them about maybe 12 different categories of data to enter. They don't have to enter it all. But if they do, we're going to start being able to track the genetics, everything about the field it was grown in, the carbon collection from that field, and a whole bunch of other things. So the goal is to get them to register their fields that they're growing in, the genetics they're growing in, how many acres they're growing. Is it for fiber? Is it for hurt? When do you believe your harvest will be? If you start here, is it harvested in August, September? Because all that tells us something for the manufacturers, right, in the processor. So we're trying to get them to, I know it's going to be a little tough. We'll do most of this for all of our farmers. We'll add all the stuff for them. And we'll be more than willing to do that for any farmer, to be honest with you, to get their data in here. But trying to make it as easy as possible.
Okay. Is there an incentive for farmers to get involved here?
One incentive would be simply being able to promote your acreage into a larger market, get a better deal, if you will, right? You put your acres in, if it's not under contract with a processor already, you say I have 50 acres of Yuma S, Yuma T, whatever. Here's how it's been grown. This is the quality that it's been grown towards, all that stuff. I want 20 cents a pound or 18 or whatever that number is. You put that out there and hopefully now you can sell some of those additional acres because we do know that industrial hemp is rejuvenating the soil that these farms are growing it on. So even if you just grew it as part of your rejuvenation of your soil, you could now put it into the marketplace and try to monetize that fiber or that stalk.
Okay.
We also will, as this thing grows, we have a Farmer Catalyst program, again, that Steve Groff runs for us. We will do profit sharing as their stalks and fibers get processed and the revenue is tracked through this platform. It is a commerce platform, so you can order stuff, ship stuff. Pieces of all that will go back to the farmers that are part of the program.
Yeah, I was curious how it's set up. What's the business model? How are you monetizing this?
Everyone asks that, right? Everyone's like, how are you making money on this? As I said before, it's more of an enabling. Our core business is growing industrial hemp and processing it, building these network of processing plants, very small ones close to the farms that can process very specific types of fiber or herd that the manufacturers need, right? That's our core business. That's where we're going to make the money that we need to grow. This becomes an enabling force for us, right? Because if we can build confidence in this industry and in this market in the U.S. by giving people visibility into what is happening, then we believe the adoption of this plant will grow, dramatically. And if it grows dramatically, we grow dramatically.
Sure.
The U.S. grows dramatically. And so we're not going to make our money on this platform. We will have ad spaces and all that stuff, but our goal is not necessarily to make money on the platform. It's to energize the industry so that our other part of the business grows faster.
Okay. It's like a marketing tool for the other part of the business.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about that other business, the growing and processing side. So where are you based?
We are based in Maryland. Most of our farms are right up there next to you. Steve Groff, he's leading our charge for the agriculture side. And so we have somewhere in a range of 150 acres in Pennsylvania today. We have about 100 acres in New Jersey. And our goal was, we're starting out. This is our first 4 months. So we didn't want to go too big, because this is all new to me specifically, but we wanted to prove a lot of these models out before we went full board. And so none down in Maryland right now, but obviously I'm based in Maryland. So we're working to bring farmers on in Maryland. Next year, we hope is going to be a much bigger year for our farmer community around, gives us time to market to them and explain to them what's going on and how to monetize this for themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully by this time next year, the Industrial Hemp Act, the exemption will have gone through and your fiber and grain growers can just more easily become fiber and grain growers. Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, I tell you, this is why I feel like I walked in at the perfect time, because everything I heard from all the risk people when I got in this market is regulation. It's a drug, right? No matter what you think the stalk is, it's classified as a drug. And so when I heard that our folks, at the Hemp Association, National Hemp Association, already pushed this up in the Congress, we have some inroads up there. So we've been briefing some of our senators and congressmen as well to get them to support this act. So it is very important for everything you just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think by the time this is published, what I'm about to tell you won't really be news anymore. But just yesterday, I think the bill has been introduced as a companion bill to the Senate bill, the Exemption Act, the Industrial Hemp Act of 2023.
Nice.
A congressperson from Montana and then Chrissy Houlahan from here in Pennsylvania as the co-sponsor. They've introduced that. So it's moving along.
Is it going to be, do you know, is it going to be a standalone bill, or are they trying to rope it or put it into the farmer?
Yes, both.
Yeah.
If they can get it done as standalone legislation, then they will. But I think most people are thinking it's going to get into the farm bill. But the deadline for getting things into there, I think, is coming up soon, like the end of next week.
Yep.
So,
but that's exciting. So that to us, I mean, it's not going to keep us from doing what we're doing, but man, will help accelerate what this model really starting to look like.
Yeah. All right. So you've got some acreage in New Jersey, some in Pennsylvania, potentially some in Maryland eventually. Tell me about the processing center. Where is that located, and what have you outfitted it with?
That is a great question. We have not actually built one yet. We are working with processors now to offload our stalks in the short term. We are in the process of raising money. One of the biggest challenges to this market is obviously finding people to finance it, right? Even banks, because of the word hemp. And so we're about, I would say, within about 30 days of raising money. And once we raise that, then our first actual processing plant might be on, and this is probably not really widely known, but up near you on a farm that's very close to you. If we can get all the right permissions, if you will, then we will have our first processing plant up on Steve's farm.
Oh, on Steve's farm. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Does Steve know about this?
Yes, he does. Like
exciting.
I said, it's all the other people that need to know about it, and he's been talking to some folks. I'm not saying it's been agreed to, and I'm not trying to create any whatever
controversy or
controversy. No,
right.
It's our plan, but if not there, then it will be probably somewhere in the Pennsylvania area, just because that's the cluster of farms. We expect to build smaller processing. We're not going big. We're going small and very specific. So based upon the manufacturers we're talking to now, we know what specs that they need. We're going to build these manufacturing or the processing plants and the farms around it to grow the genetics, and the processors to be sort of completely engaged at the quality needed for that manufacturer. It doesn't mean they won't do other stuff, but it's got to be fine-tuned for that manufacturing's quality. We don't want to be one thing that can do a lot of things. We want to be very small and very specific and be very close to the farms.
Right.
So it becomes a network of these things over the next 18 months that we'll start building in Pennsylvania, in Maryland. Not sure about New Jersey, but there's plenty of places up there to build.
Right. Yeah, from what I understand, it's like you want to know exactly how your hemp is going to be used, like the final product, before you even plant the seed.
Yep.
Because there's so much nuance in there with how it's grown, or the different properties of the different varieties. So, okay.
This is where I've learned a lot, right? I would have said, all hemp is created equal, all fibers are created equal, but that is not even close. When I started really engaging with manufacturers to see, they've been doing this for a bit, and they have very specific, they know exactly what they need to make their stuff work. But nobody else knows that. Right. And so what we were able to do is get those specs from those manufacturers and start asking the questions, can anybody in the U.S. today meet those specs? Doesn't mean they can't in the future, but can they today? And nobody right now, without some post-processing of the fiber, significant post-processing of the fiber, would it meet the requirements of large manufacturers here. But next year, right, that's the goal, is we need the manufacturers to tell us 1,500 tons of this fiber with these specs in the next 18 months. Let the marketplace see that. Let the growers grow the right genetics and all that stuff. And that's where the AI comes in, right? We're going to be able to tell farmers in regions that are meeting a requirement from a manufacturer. We're going to tell them exactly the type of genetics, ideal genetics. We're not going to tell them what to do. We're just going to give you the ideal genetics all the information you need to make a good decision, to grow the right thing for the right amount of time, harvest when you need to harvest under these conditions, the redding process, all of that will be very prescribed for a very specific type of grow for a very specific demand.
Okay. So you said you've got how many farmers? I know you said where they are, but how many guys are you working with?
About 11 farmers now that I'm aware of. Steve is always working new ones.
Yeah.
And so we're, like I said, each of those farms are growing small plots this year. We are doing, and I think you talked to Steve about this, but we're testing over, I think, 9 genetics across these different fields, both in Jersey and in Pennsylvania, so that at the end of the grow period, we're going to have some really good data to share with the community.
Okay. Where are you sourcing those genetics?
We source most of them from, I won't say most, China, Poland, France, and then the U.S.
Okay.
And so we have Yuma, 3 different Yuma varieties. We have a Polish variety. We have a couple other French varieties. And then we have some Northwest genetic varieties that we're growing. So we're excited. They're all planted, and it's all done in the regenerative world that you know about, that Steve advocates for. And so it's really going to be exciting to see how all this stuff takes and grows, and the results of it at the end of the growth period. Hopefully it's going to be good.
Right. Yeah, hopefully.
But and then farming.
At some point, once, like the carbon market thing is figured out, then that's going to be another revenue stream for farmers. But I know we're not there yet. There's a lot of confusion in that space.
That is true. But the cool thing about this is if we engage in this platform in a community, we'll have the full blockchain from seed to product of the carbon footprint that any of this stuff has gone through. And we'll be able to make some really good, informative decisions on how this carbon credit scenario could or could not be more beneficial to the farmers.
Sure.
I'm more interested in the farmers getting paid than I am us or anybody else for what the farmer's doing. But the farmer also doesn't want to go through the process of getting certified and the cost of certification and all that other stuff. So we're going to try to take that off of their hands, the certification piece. We're going to help them get certified. And then as they move their stuff through the process, we'll be able to that big data starts becoming bigger data. We'll start sort of capturing, no pun intended, capturing those credits that have been produced through the whole supply chain.
Okay. Are you actively looking for farmers now? Like if somebody's driving down the road listening to this and they want to get in?
Yes. And this is what most of everything we're doing. We actually want to get a couple farmers to grow in July. We want to test the July to October grow. So we're definitely interested in farmers who want to put up, 10 to 20 to 30 acres of that. And we provide all the seed. We do all the transport. We'll do all that. You just have to grow it. And then next year, we really want to get in the thousands of acres in this region, go from a couple hundred to 1,000 next year for that grow. Because my hope, I know hope is not a strategy, but my hope is that we'll get enough demand, internal U.S. demand, that will warrant that kind of grow and that kind of processing.
Awesome. You mentioned your work with the DoD, the Department of Defense.
Sorry. It's the acronym. I'm an acronym.
Yeah, that's okay. Do you see opportunity there, like with hemp, with government, with military? Talk to me a bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is, again, one of those things my brain's always moving towards what's next relative to the use patterns of this plant. And so I see within the GSA construct, the General Services Administration, everything they're doing is carbon negative. They want carbon negative. And if you start infusing hemp wood and hemp insulation and hempcrete into this process, all been certified, has all those qualities that you've already talked about with many people on your podcast. We can get that in the GSA. You're talking about a huge demand within just the DoD for construction materials. But then this fiber is super, super strong. And we've done some ballistic tests on this as well to see what the suppression capability is of these fibers in different scenarios.
Wow.
To possibly see if they could be used as a bullet suppression product like Kevlar is, or so there's a lot of promise and the
Well,
problem right now.
Let's stay there a little bit. Tell me about these ballistic tests and how did it measure up? And just tell me about it.
So we call it guerrilla testing. So we're not researchers, so we're not out there, putting all the little sensors on it. But what we did is put some equivalent two by four ply, or just 2x4 wood, and the same amount in hemp wood, pure hemp wood. And basically from 10, 5, 10, and 25 feet, put a 9mm round through it. When it went through the 2x4, it went through like butter. You could see, we videoed it all. You could see how smooth the board didn't even move. When we shot the hemp wood, and this isn't geared for ballistic suppression. This is hemp wood, right? So this is just basically
right. They don't have a special
wood.
Ballistic line of hemp wood.
although yeah,
I want to point on
some
that.
Piece. Yeah, there you go. See, we're thinking the same. But we put the same round through, and what happened is as that round went through the wood, it got wrapped around the fibers in that wood, and by the time it came out, all you see is a big mushroom of fiber on the outside, and that piece of wood completely moved. I mean, it didn't just stay there like the 2x4 stayed. This thing actually moved because it took on a lot of that energy inside the wood. And we believe that there's something there relative to both building materials and areas that might be high crime or whatever. You can go down the path of figuring this out, or even in forward deployed bases overseas where you could construct a hempcrete, bunker, if you will. And again, I know I'm far off into the reality.
Well, let's just point out that hemp wood and hempcrete are two very different products made very different ways. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fiber strength that we're interested in. When you can infuse this fiber in a very specific way inside some of these other materials, it might have some pretty interesting qualities.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Have you been in touch with folks at the Department of Defense about some of these things? Like, are they aware of the potential here?
We've talked to one big prime contractor who does armor for the DoD. And these are very preliminary conversations of what if, could be's. And so we're hoping that in the next couple of months, we'll be able to get them a fairly large sample dump of fibers for them to start playing around with. They're trying to figure out exactly how to work with it, like everybody is. And so, yeah, it's all part of what we're trying to do. We're not a manufacturer, so we're not manufacturing this stuff, but we also know that by proving that this product can do things, will bring the confidence to this industry in the U.S. that it needs.
Okay. Are you also looking at like hemp fabrics and textiles?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's the big demand right now. Like the pieces going over to, China and other places are generally all fabric based, textile based. Some other like polyurethane types of mixes and stuff like that type, but most of it is fiber. We see the herd being more of the construction side inside here, the U.S., and that's getting a lot of momentum as well. So, but most of it is like the textile clothing, textile fabrics, a little bit of paper. Plastic is still a mess.
Tell me about the team that you have assembled. You've mentioned Steve Groff as your like farmer guy, but who else is on your team?
Yeah, so we have my partners, Stu, which Stu is the dude that introduced me to all this, and so we've been friends for a long time. I've been in the DoD, so I didn't really talk about or even know anything about it. And he basically said, "You should check this out. There's a business somewhere in there and you might be interested in." And so he really got me into this, and now we're partners in this adventure. So
what's his last name?
Stu Malone.
Stu Malone.
Mallon. So he's basically going to be helping us grow. He has a lot of connections in a lot of different industries. So we're going to hopefully start getting in those manufacturing spaces, because it's not the manufacturer, it's the ones who are supplying it to the manufacturers that we need to get to.
Right.
And then Mike Schofield, which is one of our guys who's doing some work with hempcrete blowing and stuff like that in New Jersey. And then we have a team of about 6 developers that sit behind developing this platform. And so it's a team of about 8 or 9 right now, but we're hoping it to be somewhere in the 15 range by the end of the summer.
Okay. And the website where people will be able to get to it once you launch in a week or so is Metaihemp, so
Yep.
METAIHEMP.com.
Yep. All
Okay.
one word. Yep.
All right. What do you know about the Pennsylvania Hemp Engine? This is something that I've been
Ah,
hearing about, and I'm
yeah.
trying to figure out what I've got some calls scheduled for next week. I'm trying to learn as much as I can, but I feel like you know more about it than I do.
I only know more about it now because of Steve Groff introducing me to the folks that are actually starting to work that, right? And so I've been on calls with them for the last week, and they have a really it's for me, it's like exactly what we need. We need the government, the state. If you're going to do anything, help us move this forward, right? And so they're now working under these NSF grants, National Science Foundation grants, to do genetic testing on industrial hemp, support farmer growing of industrial hemp, processing plants all through Pennsylvania. So our strategies are very well aligned. They probably have more money than I do, or they will. And so we're going to come together as a private-public relationship to basically bring manufacturing into Pennsylvania too. These folks that are starting to figure out what they can build with this might want to move closer to the source of both the grow and the processing. So it's a real thing, and I'm excited because it's the first state that I know, other than maybe Montana and some of the states out there, that are actually really seriously pushing this at the legislative, at the state level too, at the governor level.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I admit I'm super proud of Pennsylvania because, making a go at it, this is important to our Department of Agriculture. It seems to be important to our, to the governor, and it could be just a boon for our farmers. But like you mentioned before, there's the stigma now. It's like a double stigma. There's the marijuana stigma that people are like, oh, no. But then you add the CBD stigma, and it's like, oh, man.
Yep.
So like in an ideal world, I would just love to just separate the two things and have hemp be hemp and have it be grain and fiber, and we make the stuff, the food, fuel, fiber. And then over here, medicinal cannabis, your CBD, your THC, all that stuff. It just, to me, it's super simple, right? Because I'm a simpleton. Just like make it easy, just split them, because there is so much confusion in the space. And, it's like I have two daughters, and we were talking about hemp last night at dinner. My oldest is in middle school, and she's like, they think it's drugs. They think hemp is drugs. And so
you get that weird smirk as soon as you tell someone, like, even if you say hemp. I'm in industrial hemp, they hear the hemp and then they give you a little smirk.
They're like, yeah.
And I'm like, nope, not that kind. And then you got to go on it. So part of the investment we're getting is to market and to advertise, right? To really get this message out in a constructive way where we can really educate people. We can't do it if we're going to have to spend all this time running down to the hill every 2 weeks to educate Congress folks and senators. That's not going to win. We need to get it out to the masses in a way that people really start embracing this. We've seen it in a little more mainstream media. It's considered mainstream. Some podcasts, some well-known podcasts have been talking about it. Some ex-athletes have been talking about it. So maybe, just maybe, this thing is starting to turn around.
It's coming along. And I think as, sort of the younger generations start to move into, positions of power, they're going to, and I don't mean necessarily like governmental power, but even like consumer power, when people are going to demand that their products be made sustainably, carbon negative, that's what's going to move the needle when there's just a critical mass of people who want their products to be regenerative, not extractive.
And why not, right? This is one of those things that I look at and I'm saying, we're going to grow jobs. We're not changing a whole culture in 5 years or 6 years or 10 years. We're not telling people stop doing this or stop doing that. We just infuse this weed, this thing that can grow in 4 months and collect all this carbon. We're just infusing it a little bit at a time in all these industries so that we just get cleaner. Because as well as the regenerative farming, if we can help farmers move towards a more regenerative farming model where all that that cover crops and the no-till keep the runoff down and keep the nutrients in the soil. Now the streams and the waterways are good. The air is going to be good. If we can just do that, that'd be significant. Don't have to disrupt the whole culture in 5 years to make this make sense.
Right. And for farmers, you start, developing your soil, your nutrient density of the crops you're producing is going to go up. Like there's just so many sort of ancillary benefits or unintended consequences.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it. I've looked for the negative. I've looked for negative. And outside of the government being involved relative to legislation and all that, there's really no negative to growing this plant and to trying to figure out how to make it make sense. I mean, they're just not. But, that's me.
Yeah. I am an optimist, right? I tried pessimism. It didn't work out for me. So I'm going with optimism.
Yep.
And it's like, if we can't imagine the world that we want, right, then we're never going to get it. We don't deserve it if we can't, think about it and figure out how to work together to build it. Because it didn't take us long to trash the world, right? Like a couple hundred years. Yeah. And so with a concerted effort, we can change that. And so I'm optimistic about that. I'm putting my faith in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and you in the U.S. and probably, in other places, but I'm talking specifically about the U.S., our farmers are unlike any other farmers on the globe. And we have the most innovative manufacturing, really, the thinkers, to really make this a big industry and make this a center. Right now, we're not the center of this. And the question is, why not? I mean, we have farming land. We have money to build processing plants. We should just start working towards an end, which is never going to be an end, but it's at least moving in the right direction.
Right direction.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of things are kind of like stacked against it, and it's essentially the big industries that are already there taking up that space and sort of claiming these things. And, these big businesses are sort of fine with the status quo because, oil companies, they're just raking in billions and billions in profits, like every quarter. It's insane. To me, I look at like carbon is wealth, right? Or it should be wealth. And it's look at these oil companies and how they squander that wealth. They just, the plastic in the ocean, the oil spills. It's like we can do better than this, and it can be agriculturally based.
And none of this stuff should be an argument, right? I mean, it's the question, I think, ultimately in how it's presented. If it's presented from a political point of view, it's always going to strike a good chord and a negative chord. We just look at this commonsensically, which that's where I'm a little more pessimistic when it comes to government. This is just the right thing to do. And I feel like I'm a good barometer. Like I'm a skeptic, right? I'm truly a skeptic. And it's just the world I live in. And for me to in 4 months become a lover and a believer in this, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it going to be successful. It's just, there's something there. We should at least look at it.
Yeah.
Not hide from it.
Yeah. Well, what else should I ask you about Hemp Katalyst? What else do you want to tell me?
I think we covered most of it, right? I mean, it's a community. There's everyone, all, business strategies when you go out to raise money. Who's your competitors? Nobody. We don't have competitors. I mean, we need to all come together and figure out a way to grow this industry in the U.S. faster than it would if we all just do this by ourselves.
Right.
Because a lot of great work being done independently, for sure. And there's very centralized networks, but they're stovepipes. They're people who are speaking the same language. They're not people sharing the breadth of this potential. And to me, that's what we can do together, right? Is really move this thing in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm optimistic. I'm a believer in our people.
Yeah. For me, that's all about the people. Like, I'm definitely, an advocate for hemp and for farmers and for, bringing jobs back to Pennsylvania, to the United States, all that. But yeah, it's as I've gotten into this space and have gotten to know people, it's so much passion and we just want to move to a new paradigm, right? And that's what I feel like is happening. And there's a lot of cooperation. They use the word co-opetition, I think.
Yep.
But
Yep.
in the fiber and grain space, especially, I've gotten to know the folks out west at iHemp and South Bend, Kansas, and people are working together. They're trying to put together like trade alliances. And so I think what you're doing here, I think, is going to be well received on the national level.
Yeah, that's our hope, right? This is not a state. This platform is not meant to be a state. It's meant to be this nation. And all those folks that you just talked to, that's who we bought our fiber from, right? That's who taught me all the things that I know. And so this community is willing to teach and willing to educate. Steve Groff is one of the best. And all we have to do is be willing to listen. And right now, sometimes the word hemp just closes people's ears. And that's a shame.
We need, like a really good marketing campaign, right?
Yeah.
And just talk about everything that hemp is, right?
You need one big influencer, someone who can take this thing and make it at least enough of the common dialect that when you say it, it's not negative. We just need to turn the negative part of hemp so that people, when they see it, feel positive about it. And that takes time. But proof is in the pudding, right? If we can keep building stuff and we start slowly emerging some of these industries into using our internal, meaning U.S. industrial hemp, and then we start seeing that air and the streams getting cleaner, it's not going to happen overnight. That's what everybody wants, is everything has to happen overnight. This is a long-term strategy. We've got to do this slowly because those industries don't want to change either, right?
No.
But they have to. And if they're going to survive in the future, our kids' future, they're going to have to start thinking a little bit differently.
Yep.
And I think we could be part of that.
Absolutely, yeah. During the pandemic, when like most people stopped driving and there was less commuting, and you saw environmental results, like not instantly, but there were some positive things coming out of that.
It's funny you say, because remember the world I lived in, it was the first time that our Defense Department said they could see China from a satellite, like see imagery. Right now, maybe that's a defense that China has, right? Just keep producing as much pollution as you want, and it's all good. But I'm just kidding. But it is like when you're not putting all that stuff out there. But if we have to put stuff out there, let's find something that can collect it all and put more positive nutrients into the ground for better products that are coming from our farms as well. More nutrients.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's a circle of logic to me. Like this just makes sense.
Right. Because it's like, what's it? Occam's razor, like the simple solution, right? Hello, come on.
Simple scares people. It really does, right? Simple scares people. And I don't know. But I'm trying and you're trying. So at least together we can keep communicating. And I think that will at least be a good piece of the puzzle.
Right. You mentioned getting some kind of influencer on here. So what are we thinking? Taylor Swift? Let's get Taylor Swift.
Well, Taylor, if you're listening, once you get off the tour, you'll have a little extra money. Maybe you can also put some money into the hemp market, industrial hemp market. But, athletes, everyone looks at a good athlete, Michael Jordans of the world, people who actually rep Nike. Nike uses it, but it's in China. They use it. So it's that kind of the people that people listen to, and not because they have the craziest video on TikTok, but because they've been around and they have a good reputation.
Right. I was talking to a woman who does business development for Hemp Vortex. They're a large importer it's a Chinese company that exports hemp textiles. And, she said that their company would definitely source from the U.S. if their customers demanded that. So if Nike or Patagonia was like, no, let's grow it and process it here, then industry would respond. So,
and why do you think they wouldn't? That's a question, right? The only way everyone says it's more expensive. Well, it's only more expensive because we don't have enough of it. It's a weed. It takes less fertilizer, less pesticides, less everything for farmers to grow. This should be cheaper than anything else out there. And so all we have to do is make that make sense to people and say, hey, if we can get it to you at 30% cheaper. Oh, and by the way, you're now going to be more carbon neutral. as an organization in the U.S. And, all those things just take time and influence, right? You got to have the right people talking to the right people.
And maybe we start measuring profits not so much in terms of money, but maybe there's other ways that we can profit.
Sure. And you should be rewarded. Like if you want to change anything, you incent people, you incentivize them, right? You put things out there that are real and possible, but beneficial. And like carbon credits feels like that, but my wife told me it feels like they're cheating, she's like, wait, people can use as many carbon, can have a jet, can fly around the world, can do all these things, and all they have to do is buy the way out of it.
Yeah, that does not make any sense to me. It never has. Like that's not how that has to happen.
But I say like this, if that's the way it's going to happen, then I want to give that money to the farmers. I want the farmers to build a legacy from this product and help their other products also get more enriched for all of us, right? Because downstream, we eat those things. We can make their soil better, our vegetables better, and we're collecting carbon. Again, I say, why not?
Yeah, and you can build healthier houses. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was only up to us too, I think we would figure it all out.
Yeah, but we're going to need a lot of help. We're going to need everybody on board. Oh, Duane, it's good to talk to you.
You have a massive reputation in this space, and I told someone, I was like, I'm going to be talking to Eric, and they're like, what? Hey, tell him I want to talk to him. I was like, no, I'm not telling him you want to talk to him.
Well, who's that? Maybe I want to talk to them too. I like talking to people. Was it Paul McCartney? Because I really want to interview Paul McCartney.
It was Taylor Swift, man. She's like, okay, when I get off tour, I'm coming to visit Eric. I was like, all right.
We need to make the friendship bracelets out of hemp. Taylor, listen up.
Easy. Yeah, now, that's an easy one, right? Just in my marketing, I've produced all these 3D hemp things. Our little farmer. Well, you can't see it if you're listening, but there's a farmer behind me. Produced all that in hemp. All the shirts we have, all hemp. Because people ask you as soon as you're in this industry. Well, do you do it? Do you? I don't know why I'm making that sound, but how they ask you.
That's the voice of people asking dumb questions. Yeah, I hear you.
Like you have an electric vehicle. Well, do you have electric? Blah 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 and blah blah blah. Like, no, I'm just trying to help, man. Yeah. Just a little bit at a time. That's the key. Slow and steady.
Yeah, I do want to bring up you referred to hemp as a weed, and I guess there's something like that rubs me the wrong way. I'm like, we need to respect it, respect the plant more, and sure, it can grow like a weed. It's been called weed, and that's associated with the THC side. So this is a commodity crop. This is a life-changing crop here. So.
You know what? Thank you for saying that. I say it as more of a reflection of cost, right?
Right. And how easy it is to grow.
It's not an oak tree that's going to take 80 years to grow, right? It is something that can grow fast, collect carbon as it's growing, be processed into a product within months. That's equal to in quality or better than quality of the stuff being made now.
Yeah.
And so I agree. And thank you for correcting me on that. I definitely need to get better in my marketing lingo.
It's all right. You're new. We forgive you.
Yeah. So. I appreciate that. Yeah. I get a bogey.
All right. Well, Duane Shugars, it's been great to talk to you. And we'll put some links up to the marketplace, to the Metaihemp.com website, Hemp Katalyst. And if there's anything else you want to, share with our audience, send us some links and I'll put those on the show page too.
Eric, I appreciate it, sir. And again, we're called Hemp Katalyst for a reason, but you are the catalyst of a lot of the messaging that needs to be done to make this thing really grow. So I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for saying so. Yeah, I love what I do, and I'm grateful to get to do it. So there you go, Duane Shugars from Hemp Katalyst. If you go to the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com, you'll be able to click on all the links and check everything out, including those news nugget links I talked about in the beginning, and I will have a link right to that tool that will help you find your representative so you can get a message to them, so you can let them know that the Industrial Hemp Act of 2023, aka the Hemp Exemption, is important to you, it's important to the industry, and it's going to make growing hemp a whole lot easier for the farmers who know how to grow things. Okay, so that's it for me. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you want to get in touch with me, please do send an email directly to me. You can send it to eherlock@lancasterfarming.com, or you can call me up and leave me a message, 717-721-4462. All right. Thanks again. Until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial Hemp.
Season 3, Episode 21, I think, is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow. And here's a little bit of Shetland fiddle played on the ukulele.